As I'm sure you know now, on Saturday alone, more than 500 people crossed the channel in small boats. That's a barge full, despite the government's promise to stop them.
Tragically, on the same day, at least 6 migrants died trying to make the journey. And as Richard said, of course, the barge intended for migrants in Dorset, which could house about 500 at capacity, is now empty because Legionella bacteria was found in the water supply. I think some 39 have been brought on and then now taken off.
So, with a risk to life on the way here, chaos in the system and health risks once they've arrived, is Britain letting the migrants down? Are we failing in our humanitarian duty? Joining us now to discuss all this is Amnesty International's Steve Valdez-Symonds. He says Britain has a moral and legal responsibility to help migrants cross the channel. And we have the former Brexit Party MEP, Ben Habib, who believes that the UK is being overwhelmed and that the migrants should stay in the safe country that they're in, which is France. We are certainly getting a lot of response from viewers this morning about this French angle. And to summarise it, people are saying that they believe that the French authorities are going through the motions in stopping some of the boats and making 1 or 2 arrests of gang members, not that many, but basically they're turning a blind eye. Is that your assessment of what's happening across the channel?
We've got footage of French policemen standing by watching boats being launched. You know, that's been, you know, that was made available on Twitter and other social media platforms over a year ago. Absolutely, the French have a moral hazard here, don't they? Because it's in their interest for the problem to become a British problem. And the other thing that the French have learnt, and inculcated by British government policy, is that the more people that cross the channel, the more money we're prepared to pay them. So 3 years ago, we paid £50 million. 2 years ago, we paid 55 million. Last year, we paid 63 million pounds to the French to try and control this problem. And this year, we have struck a deal for £500 million. So nearly £1 billion would have gone across to France for a failure to police this problem.
And it's not just the French, is it? I mean, this is a Euro-wide problem. I read yesterday, for example, in several newspapers, that there is a large warehouse in Germany where many of these RIBs, these inflatable boats, are being stored by the gangs, and they then basically export them across the border into France and to the Pas-de-Calais. If the press can find out where the boats are coming from, where they're being stockpiled, why can't the German police intervene?
Well, absolutely right. And you made a really important point, that this is a well-organised criminal activity. By the time these people are crossing the channel, they are there because of criminal activity. They're not there through their own... of course, they've paid to get there. They've paid these criminals to get there. But they haven't walked unaided all the way from Greece to France. They've been channeled there by people smugglers. And we had shots fired, for example, on Sunday morning before these boats were fired. This is an aggressive criminal activity. It's aided and abetted by the Schengen zone, which creates open borders across Europe. So once you're in Italy and Greece, you can make your way straight over to France. And it seems that the French are giving into the moral hazard to which they are subject, which is to export the problem to the United Kingdom.
Steve, so it's not Britain's fault. The British government isn't letting the migrants down. There's a whole system of governments across the world that are not playing their part. And we're paying the French £500 million on the latest deals. Many would say, for what?
Well, I agree with the last question. For what? Because we're paying France to intercept boats and to stop people making crossings. And the number of interceptions that France has made over the last few years is many, many, many tens of thousands. But what happens to the people? The people cannot get into the French asylum system, partly because France is already, and has been for many, many years, receiving hugely more people into its asylum system than do we. And that is true right across Europe. So what happens to those people? Their situation remains the same. They're stuck in northern France in miserable conditions, brutality from the French authorities, supposedly to deter them. And of course, they will try another journey. Goodness knows how many people are stopped twice, 3 times, 4 times before finally making the crossing.
So is the answer then to just let more migrants in? Because many would argue that that isn't the answer. They don't want their borders open in that way. You have, then said there that the Schengen zone has provided a problem because people can move freely across those borders. What is your solution then if they're stuck in terrible conditions in other countries? What do we do about it?
We should allow some people to make safe crossings.
You said some. What's the number that you think?
There's no number. That's a fool's game, because that obviously depends upon the situation in the world and the number of people who need to make journeys. So it changes. But, for example, we could certainly focus in this country on the fact that some of the people who make these crossings have very strong connection to this country. Some of them even have close family here. Others of them, for crying out loud, have fought alongside British troops in places like Afghanistan. Why are they on these boats? Why are we not saying to other European nations, including France, yes, let's identify people whom we can receive into our asylum system, relieve some of the pressure that you receive, and share in the responsibility that actually are ours.
All right.
OK, well, why not, then? Why not?
Steve makes a couple of really good points, if I may say so. And one of them is that the French house these people in appalling conditions, and no one is calling the French out on it. If you look at the numbers, the French spend about £5,000 a year, €6,000 a year, on caring and housing migrants. We spend over £50,000 a year. So that puts into perspective the economic impetus, the desire to leave this, the awful treatment that they get in France.
Who should be the people to call France out?
Well, it has to be the British government. The French absolutely need to be called out. They're part of the problem. The notion that this is a British government problem is a fundamentally flawed one. We are an incredibly generous country. If anything, frankly, the notion that we can use deterrence to prevent the boats from coming...
I want to ask you about that.
It's not going to work.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? That is the central plank of the latest government policy,
Yeah.
the idea of sending these people to Rwanda while they're processed, or Ascension Island if we can't get them to Rwanda. The idea of putting them on a barge, it's meant to be a deterrent, and it's clearly not working. If you get 500 coming across in one day after they'd heard that 6 people had drowned and one of the boats had sunk.
But it's not a deterrent, because they know that we treat them extremely well. They know that if they're not able to be housed in the barge, which, by the way, ain't that bad, they've got a gym, they've got, facilities and taxi services and buses and medical care and food, which they describe themselves as being good. They know that the Brits are actually welcoming, warm, capable, caring nation. That's why they come to the UK. And there is no deterrence that's working, because all the programmes we've put in place are fundamentally flawed.
Right, let's imagine that you're Prime Minister, you're Prime Minister for the day. You have your hands on the levers of power, you really do. What would be the first 3 things that you do to solve this?
Well, firstly, I'd stop kidding myself that the UK is some manna from heaven place. It is not.
Well, why are they coming here, Steve?
Why are the vast majority of people not coming here? If what you say is true, why is it that consistently France, Germany, Italy, every European country, almost bar none, receive proportionally or absolutely many more people?
Well, is it because of the English Channel? Is it because they have to cross the Channel to get here?
No, it's because they clearly have other connections elsewhere and are received into those systems. For crying out loud, the French allow people to work. We don't. We simply store people in our now dysfunctional system that the government has shut down. There is a reason why our accommodation system has utterly capitulated. It is because the government has chosen a policy not to decide people's claims. That's a reason why this country has a larger asylum backlog than France,
Mr. Habib,
despite the fact that the French have received hundreds of thousands more people into their system over the last several years than has this country.
All right, last word on that to Mr. Habib.
Well, the government is not deliberately not processing asylum claims.
It is its policy. You can read it.
They waived a couple of months ago, they waived the requirement for interviews in order to speed up that process. We can't cope with the number of people coming across. One last thing. You get no illegal crossings into Poland It's because the migrants
You
know...
do get
you
illegal
do not-
crossings
you-
into
you-
Poland.
You do not get illegal...
I'm sorry, my organisation is based there and knows that.
And the reason they don't go into Poland is because they don't get the generous treatment that they get in the United Kingdom. This is economic migration. They're safe in France.
True.
The French need to deal with the criminal problem they've got, and they need to stop the problem in France.
And at that point, we have to stop the interview because we're out of time. But I have to say, gentlemen, I think you'll both be coming in again and again and again, because the front page of the Telegraph this morning, they've seen a leaked document issued in March by the Home Office saying that they expect the migrant crisis at its current level to continue for at least 5 years. 5 years. Takes us to 2028.
Very depressing for those involved in it. Good to speak to both of you this morning.
Thank you both.
Thank you.